What separates men who talk about change from men who become the change? It's not talent, not luck, not motivation. It's something far quieter, far rarer, and far more powerful. It's discipline. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that shows up when no one's watching, when no one's cheering, when every excuse is within reach. The Stoics believe the strongest man is the one who conquers himself, because the real battlefield isn't outside, it's your own mind. It's the voice that says tomorrow, the craving that says just this once, the comfort that slowly erodes your fire. If you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever said, "I'll get serious soon," you're not alone. Every man who ever rose from mediocrity faced that same war inside. But what made them unstoppable was not that they felt ready, but that they acted anyway. In this video, you'll learn 8 timeless lessons rooted in Stoic philosophy to hack your mind, build daily self-discipline, and reclaim the fire that comfort has been stealing from you. You'll see how small changes in structure, thought, and identity can break the loop of procrastination and rebuild your core from the inside out. If you're ready to stop explaining and start becoming, this is your turning point. Like this video, hit subscribe, and let's dive into the quiet power behind unstoppable men, the Stoic way. 1. Discipline is self-love. You say you want to improve. You talk about goals, change, and freedom, but every time you hit snooze, every time you scroll instead of move, eat instead of build, complain instead of act, you're telling yourself, you don't matter enough, not yet, not today. And without knowing, you start treating yourself like someone who can wait, like someone whose life isn't urgent. But let's flip that for a second. Imagine someone you love, your son, your brother, your younger self. Would you feed him junk when he's already sick? Would you tell him to keep resting when what he needs is movement? Would you stand by while he sabotages his future piece by piece, just because he's tired? Then why do you do that to yourself? Discipline isn't a punishment. It's not about restriction, denial, or suffering. It's protection. It's respect. It's what you do when you believe you're worth the effort. Real effort. The kind that shows up at 5 a.m. when it's cold. The kind that skips the easy choice at midnight. The kind that keeps promises silently, especially when no one else cares. Still, many men confuse self-love with indulgence. They say, "I deserve this break. I've had a hard day. I'll start tomorrow." But real love isn't soft when it needs to be sharp. If your house was burning and you kept sitting on the couch because you were tired, that wouldn't be self-care. That would be slow destruction. A man once told me he loved himself too much to live with rules. He had given up his gym routine, skipped his meals, and buried his dreams under the phrase, "I'm being kind to myself." But when I met him again years later, his eyes didn't look kind. They looked lost, tired, ashamed of how far he had drifted. He hadn't been kind, he had been absent. The Stoics would call this a form of inner betrayal. Marcus Aurelius said, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" Not because life must be hard, but because your time is sacred. Because self-respect is fragile, and it dies quietly when you abandon what matters most. Most men don't break in one moment. They fade into small choices, that second drink, that skipped walk, that one-night scroll that turns into weeks of mental fog. And it always starts with a lie disguised as kindness. Rest a little more. It's fine. You've earned it. But comfort that delays your duty is not love. It's neglect dressed in soft words. If you want to reclaim your drive, start where it hurts. Start where you've been passive. Stop waiting for motivation to tap you on the shoulder. It won't, but your body already knows what to do. You've just trained it to forget. So do something physical today that says, "I matter." Not something flashy, not something you'll post, just one honest act. One walk you don't skip. One glass of water instead of another snack. One moment you sit with discomfort and don't run from it. That's what discipline looks like when it's rooted in love. And if that voice in your head still says you're being too hard on yourself, ask again. Would I let someone I love stay in this state for another year? If the answer is no, then act like someone worth saving. Because you are. And you don't need a reason to start. Just a reminder that every time you choose structure over impulse, you are showing yourself what love truly means. Quiet, focused, relentless. 2. Act first, feel later. You don't need more inspiration. You need fewer delays. That's the truth no one wants to say out loud, because waiting feels safer. Waiting feels justified. But every time you say, "I'll start when I feel ready," you hand over the steering wheel of your life to your emotions. And emotions are unreliable drivers. Discipline doesn't begin when you feel like it. It begins when you act without waiting. That's what separates the unstoppable from the almost. The Stoics understood this long before modern science tried to measure it. They didn't live according to moods. They lived by values, by duty, by a commitment to act as if they were already strong, already focused, already who they needed to become. A man once told me he would fix his life when he had more clarity. I asked him what he was doing today to earn that clarity. He said, "Waiting for the fog to clear." I told him, "Walk through the fog. Movement makes the path visible." He didn't answer, but his silence was honest. Because deep down he knew clarity doesn't come before action. It follows it. You won't feel like working out after a long day. You won't feel like writing after rejection. You won't feel like being disciplined when no one's watching. But that's when it matters most. When it's silent, when no one applauds, when the only voice pushing you forward is your own, quiet, tired, but still moving. We've been taught to wait for motivation like it's weather, like it's something that arrives on a good day with sunshine and momentum. But motivation is not weather. It's not random. It's built. It's earned. It shows up after you've started, not before. Your brain rewards movement, not overthinking. So if you sit and wait for the fire, you'll freeze. Imagine a soldier waking at dawn on a battlefield saying, "I'll go when I feel ready." He'd be dead by noon. Stoics treated daily life with that same seriousness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You were born to do the work of a human being. Why are you hesitating?" Not to be poetic, but because every delay was a form of decay. Look around. How many men are stuck in mental quicksand? Not because they lack knowledge, but because they're waiting to feel different before they act. They think mindset precedes movement. But it's the other way around. Action reshapes identity. One disciplined move becomes evidence that you're no longer who you used to be. And that is how change begins. Silently, stubbornly, not in grand gestures, but in quiet defiance. There was a mechanic I knew in Michigan. Gray coveralls, grease-stained hands, and barely spoke. But every morning at 5 a.m., he opened the shop and swept the floor before the first car came in. When I asked why, he said, "Because I used to show up late, and it made me hate myself." He didn't wait to feel like a better man. He acted like one, until, over time, he became one. So today, don't ask yourself how you feel. Ask what you promised, and then do it. Get out of bed while your doubts are still drowsy. Finish what you said you'd start, even if no one cares. You don't need loud motivation or perfect timing. You need to make one decision. Act now, feel later. Start with one task you've been avoiding. Don't overplan it. Just begin. Even 5 minutes. Even clumsy. Even afraid. Because the truth is, feelings follow footsteps. You show your brain what matters by what you do, not what you hope to do. And if that still feels too heavy, remember, you're not building a life around emotions. You're building a man who does what's right, regardless of how he feels. That's the secret behind those who never stop. They don't wait for momentum. They create it, one step at a time, in silence. 3. Choose your own discipline style. A man is not weak because he fails to follow someone else's plan. He is only weak when he keeps following it after knowing it doesn't work for him. Real discipline isn't about copying someone's routine. It's about building one you can actually live with. The world will show you morning routines of billionaires, cold plunges at sunrise, back-to-back productivity hacks that work for someone else's mind, someone else's body, someone else's rhythm. But you don't need a routine that works for them. You need one that works for you. One that holds under pressure when motivation is gone, when life shifts, when the fog settles in. Discipline is not a universal script. It's a personal contract. Once you write for yourself, with yourself, it adapts to your strength, your fatigue, your past, and your flaws. What matters is not whether you wake up at 4:30 a.m. or 7 a.m. What matters is whether your system moves you forward consistently, even if no one claps for it. The problem is, we think we're failing because we can't follow the template. But maybe the real failure is refusing to design our own. Maybe you're not undisciplined. Maybe you're just incompatible with the script you stole. The Stoics knew this deeply. They didn't believe in perfection. They believed in awareness. in self-honesty. Epictetus taught, know what you can bear, not as an excuse, but as a foundation, because discipline built on someone else's strengths will collapse under your weight. But a system born from your own truth will stand, even when everything else crumbles. You don't need 10 tools, you need one rule that holds. If you know your mornings are sharp but your nights are scattered, protect the mornings. Build your deep work around them. If your willpower fades after lunch, structure your toughest tasks before noon. If silence helps you think, build quiet into your day like armor. The goal is not to force yourself through friction. It's to reduce the unnecessary drag that wears you out before the real work even starts. We confuse suffering with discipline, but suffering is a leak, not a path. Pain without purpose is exhaustion. Pain with structure is progress. The disciplined man isn't the one who burns out fastest. He's the one who sustains through seasons, because he knows himself, because he stops romanticizing struggle and starts optimizing his environment. You won't win every battle against temptation, so stop standing at the edge of cliffs you could have walked around. Leave your phone outside the bedroom. Schedule social media like a job. Use alarms. Set rules for your energy, not your ego. Stoic wisdom doesn't ask for more effort, it asks for more clarity, more structure, more truth about how you actually function when no one's watching. And the truth is, if you keep breaking your promises, maybe the promise was wrong. Maybe it was too vague, too rigid, too performative. You're not here to impress strangers with your routine. You're here to rebuild trust with yourself through actions you can repeat in silence, even on your worst day. So rewrite the system. Simplify it until it fits you like armor. Not too loose that it slips off. Not too tight that it suffocates. Just tight enough to protect you from the chaos of the world and your own excuses. Then live it. Quietly, unapologetically. Not because it looks good on a vlog, but because it actually works. Your discipline doesn't need to be loud to be real. It needs to be yours. That's what makes it unshakable. And when it's truly yours, you'll stop chasing motivation and start trusting your method. Not perfect, just effective and built to last. 4. Procrastination has invisible costs. You think you're buying time, but you're selling trust. Every time you delay what matters, you don't just move the task, you chip away at your own belief in yourself. Procrastination isn't harmless, it's corrosive. It doesn't shout, it whispers, quietly, daily, until you no longer recognize the man you promised to become. At first, it feels like control. I'll do it tomorrow, later when I'm clear, soon when I have more energy. But what you call delay is actually erosion. You tell yourself the deadline's not real. You tell yourself the conditions aren't right. But while you're waiting for life to align, life is passing by. And the thing you keep postponing isn't just a project, it's a part of you. The part that wants to grow, the part that wants to stop hiding. The truth is, procrastination doesn't kill in one blow. It kills in inches. One scroll, one excuse, one I'll start Monday after another. It's disguised as self-care, but it leaves you tired. It poses as freedom, but it robs you of power. It makes you feel like you're choosing, but really, you're avoiding. The Stoics never romanticized delay. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That's not fear, it's focus. Because procrastination makes you forget what's at stake. It makes you think tomorrow is guaranteed. But Stoicism brings you back to this moment, this breath, this decision. Most men don't notice the damage until it shows up as regret. Not dramatic, just steady. The unread books, the body that no longer moves the way it used to, the business that never launched. The mornings are filled with noise instead of clarity. And by then, it's not about time lost, it's about identity drift. You're no longer the man who tries, you're just the one who plans to. So how do you stop? Not with shame, not with guilt, but with structure. And with brutal honesty. You don't need more hours, you need fewer escapes. You need to close the gap between intention and action. You need to stop pretending that delayed dreams don't cost you anything, because they do. And what they cost is not just time, it's momentum, it's belief, it's dignity. The Stoic path doesn't demand you become superhuman. It just demands you stop lying to yourself, stop calling avoidance thinking, stop calling fear preparation. Just do the thing, half broken, half ready, but fully awake. Pick the task you've postponed the longest. Name it, face it, Write it on paper and stare at it until your pride stings. Then act. Not perfectly, just visibly. Even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's awkward, even if your mind screams, not now. Especially then, because you reclaim power not by completing everything, but by refusing to run. You don't owe the world a polished version of yourself, but you do owe yourself a start, something real, something honest. That's where discipline is born. Not from inspiration, but from the refusal to keep avoiding what matters most. So the next time you feel the urge to push a task into the fog of later, ask one question. What does it cost me to not do this now? If the answer feels too expensive, then you've found your next move. Not a motivational push, a practical reclaiming of who you are. Do it now, while the world still sleeps, while your excuses are still soft, before they harden into regret. 5. You are what you repeatedly do. Something shifts the moment you realize discipline is not a breakthrough, it's a pattern. It's not something you find one day when everything clicks. It's something you build, brick by brick, in silence, through repetition. You don't become a disciplined man by thinking about it. You become disciplined by doing the same things that disciplined men do, long enough for your brain to stop resisting and start believing. Repetition creates identity. That's the root. Not words, not goals, actions. What you do most often becomes who you are. If you show up late every day, you become someone who's always behind. If you speak with anger every time you're tested, you become someone who cannot hold their ground. But if you show up even when it's hard and keep showing up again, something in you hardens, quietly, steadily, into strength. The mistake most men make is thinking they need a transformation before they begin the work. They say, when I'm more focused, I'll follow through. When I feel like myself again, I'll take it seriously. But the man you're waiting to become is hiding inside the man who shows up before he's ready. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind every morning, not because he was weak, but because he refused to trust yesterday's momentum. He understood, you build your soul by showing up today, again. The problem is we keep asking for motivation to strike like lightning. But what if motivation isn't lightning? What if it's friction, built slowly from the grind of repetition? What if your mind doesn't need a speech, it just needs proof? Proof that you're not quitting. Proof that you are becoming someone new, not by thinking different thoughts, but by acting differently, every single day, especially on the days that feel like nothing's changing. Because that's the paradox. The biggest shifts often come wrapped in boredom. Progress is boring. Rebuilding your life is repetitive. And yet, that's where the power is. Not in the grand gesture, not in the overnight change, but in the quiet decision to write one more sentence, lift one more rep, ignore one more excuse. It doesn't feel heroic, but it rewires you from the inside out. You start by forcing it. You show up awkward, uncertain, and tired. But the longer you stay in motion, the less resistance you meet. Your brain stops questioning. Your excuses lose their voice. And eventually your nervous system catches on. This is who we are now. We train, we act. We don't wait for conditions to be perfect. The Stoics weren't obsessed with peak performance. They were obsessed with showing up. Seneca said, well-being is attained little by little, not in waves of hype, but in daily resistance to mediocrity. So if you want to become someone different, don't shout it, prove it. Let your actions speak a new language to your mind. Let your habits convince your doubt. That's how you stop being who you were and become who you claim to be. So decide what pattern you're willing to repeat, even when the outcome isn't instant. Anchor your day around it. Let it be your quiet rebellion against drift. You don't need to go viral. You don't need applause. You need a process so simple it survives your worst day. And if you keep showing up, no matter what, you won't have to ask whether you're disciplined. You'll know. Because discipline will no longer be something you do. It will be something you are. 6. Use physical disruption to break loops. Some chains don't need to be broken with strength. They need to be interrupted. The next time you feel the pull, the craving, the delay, the lazy thought that says just 5 more minutes, don't try to fight it in your head. Change your body first. Move. Stand. Clap your hands. Breathe deep. Take a cold glass of water and drink it like you mean it. Because your mind doesn't always respond to logic, but it responds to action. Discipline begins in the body. We forget this. We think we need to reason our way out of bad habits. We don't. We need to disrupt the pattern. The Stoics knew that emotion was powerful, but not permanent. Marcus Aurelius wrote that our thoughts have no control if we don't let them settle. But in moments of weakness, we do the opposite. We settle into the craving. We sit with the urge. And the longer we sit, the deeper it roots. You've heard it before, don't give in. But how? The answer is not to outthink temptation, it's to outmove it. The nervous system is trained through motion, not theory. Every time you interrupt the cycle physically, you weaken its hold. Your brain starts to rewire itself, to pause, to question, to resist. But only if you practice, not once, but daily. Not when it's easy, but when it's inconvenient. Most men fail because they try to win with willpower alone. They sit still, hoping the feeling will pass. But feelings that are not challenged become patterns. They grow legs. And once they've been fed enough, they take over your day before it starts. That's why you don't need more emotional clarity. You need more physical breaks in the loop. It's a mental war. But it's fought with physical tools. The chair you won't leave, the phone that stays in your hand, the snacks that sit too close. You don't have to resist them. You just have to get up. Change your environment before it changes you. Leave the room. Reset the table. Walk outside. It doesn't have to be intense. It has to be immediate. The Stoics understood that mastery of the mind wasn't abstract. It was daily, practical, and embodied. You train your spirit by training your posture, your schedule, and your reactions. Not because those things are the goal, but because they are the gate. You don't reach clarity by thinking harder. You reach it by creating space, and often that space begins with motion. The modern world traps men in passivity, endless content, chairs that swallow you, notifications that prompt you to scroll. You weren't built for that. You were built to move, and when you move, even slightly, you send a signal to your mind that you're not under attack, you're in control again. So the next time the loop begins, when your body wants to sync, your finger reaches to swipe, your mind says, not today. Interrupt it. No speeches, no negotiations, just stand, shift, reset the moment. That one act, repeated often enough, becomes a mental pattern. And once you've trained your body to resist, your thoughts will follow. Because the soul is not strengthened through comfort, it's strengthened through small defiance. At the moment you say, no, not this time. Not with force, but with movement. Quiet, decisive, immediate. That's how discipline is formed. Not by fighting longer, but by moving sooner. Before the excuses settle, before the loop restarts, while you still have a choice. And that choice begins, not in the mind, but in the body. 7. Structure your day into 3 focus blocks. Momentum is not magic, it's architecture. The difference between a scattered day and a strong one is not time, it's structure. When you walk into a day without a blueprint, you hand over control to distractions. You become reactive. Everything feels urgent, but nothing moves you forward. And the worst part? You end the day exhausted without knowing why. Discipline thrives in simplicity. You don't need to schedule every second. You need anchors. Clear, deliberate blocks of time that hold your intention, not a to-do list. A time structure that defends your focus and protects your energy. The Stoics lived by this. Their lives were dictated not by how much they could cram in, but by how much they could hold still. Stillness wasn't idleness. It was the deliberate focus. In a noisy world, structure is rebellion. But many men resist it. They say it feels rigid. They say they need more freedom. But what they call freedom often turns into drift. Mindless scrolling, shallow tasks, time lost to things that don't matter. That's not freedom. That's slavery to impulse. Real freedom is control. And control begins with clarity. What matters now and when will I do it? So here's the shift. Break your day into 3 simple focus blocks. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening. That's it. Each block holds 1 meaningful task, not 5. 1. The task that, if done, will move the needle. The task that, if avoided, will follow you into the night. This isn't time management, it's identity management. Because what you focus on most often shapes what you become. Without structure, your attention scatters. With structure, it sharpens. Your phone doesn't decide your morning, your email doesn't decide your afternoon. You do. The world will keep pulling. Notifications, noise, other people's urgency, they don't stop. But when you build blocks into your day, you create walls. Not to isolate yourself, to protect what matters. This is not about becoming robotic. This is about becoming unavailable to chaos. The Stoics didn't rush. They moved with purpose. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The time is not the issue. The leak is. And your structure is the seal. When you wake up tomorrow, don't start with your inbox. Start with intent. What will your morning block be for? What truth will you return to in the afternoon? What silence will you protect in the evening? Write it down the night before. 3 lines, 3 commitments, then keep them. Not for productivity, for dignity. You're not just managing hours, you're training your nervous system. Every time you follow your structure, you're showing your mind that your priorities are not optional. You're building inner order in a world that profits from your confusion. And no, you won't be perfect. Some days will fall apart. But even a broken block is better than a day with no form. Don't wait to feel motivated. Don't wait for the perfect planner. Build a simple rhythm that lets you meet your mind with direction. You don't need complexity, you need clarity. Because the man who protects his time protects his mission. And the man who protects his mission doesn't fall apart every time the world knocks on the door. So start tonight. Write your 3 blocks. Commit to them with quiet strength. No one needs to know. But by the end of the day, you'll know. You didn't drift, you built. And that difference will change everything. 8. Discipline without applause. You don't need recognition. You need rhythm. The strongest men aren't the loudest. They're the most consistent when no one's looking. They don't wait for encouragement. They don't ask for praise. They do what needs to be done in silence. Because they know that real discipline lives in the unseen moments. The early mornings, the skipped temptations, the quiet refusals to break the standard they've set for themselves. Discipline without applause is not weakness. It's self-respect. It's holding the line when no one is watching, and no one will ever thank you for it. Most people fall into the trap of performing. They wake early so they can post it. They train hard so someone will comment. They delay rest, not because it's right, but because it makes them feel admired. But that's not discipline. That's dependency. And dependency always cracks under pressure. The man who's truly free doesn't train for praise. He trains because he owes it to the man he wants to become. He works not for a pat on the back, but because the alternative, drift, regret, softness, feels like betrayal. The Stoics understood this deeply. They wrote journals not to impress others, but to remind themselves. They meditated in private. They endured hardship without turning it into a speech. Because they knew inner strength is not a performance. It's a practice. In a world addicted to validation, silence is rebellion. And discipline done silently is a declaration that your standard doesn't need permission. When you delay gratification without sharing it, when you resist temptation without telling a soul, you're training the most powerful muscle of all, self-trust. Because the man who trusts himself no longer needs the world to approve his moves. He becomes grounded. He becomes still. But modern culture teaches the opposite. It says you're only valuable if someone claps, if someone sees, if someone follows. That's why so many men burn out. They're chasing motivation from the outside instead of building commitment from the inside. And once the applause fades, so does their discipline. But Stoicism offers another path. Do the right thing because it is right, not because it is seen. That shift changes everything. The truth is, the strongest habits are built in solitude. The real turning points are quiet, no music, no lights, just you, your word, and whether or not you'll keep it. That's the moment of truth. That's the crucible. And you pass it not by being perfect, but by being persistent. No excuses, no witnesses, just the work. So tonight, when no one's watching, when the urge to cut corners creeps in, when comfort calls you by name, pause, breathe. Remind yourself, you don't need permission, you don't need noise, you just need one more honest rep. One more act of alignment, not to be admired, but to be real. Because discipline is not about the crowd. It's about the code you live by when the crowd is gone. And once you master that, no one can take it from you. Not time, not failure, not even fatigue, because it's no longer external. It's who you are. So write it into your bones with repetition. Prove it to yourself daily, and when the results come, let them speak for you. You won't need to say a word. Discipline is not a single decision. It is a way of living, a quiet force that reshapes who you are, one honest action at a time. Today, you've walked through the mindset and methods of men who refuse to drift, who build their strength not through noise, but through stillness, structure, and self-mastery. We began by redefining discipline, not as punishment, but as self-respect. We talked about acting before you feel ready, creating your own systems instead of copying others, and breaking free from the silent decay of procrastination. You saw how identity is formed through repetition, how physical disruption can break mental loops, and how structure brings back control in a chaotic world. And finally, we closed on the idea that the strongest discipline is practiced without applause, because real growth doesn't seek validation. It seeks alignment. These aren't just theories, they are practices, and they only become yours when you apply them daily. So pick one idea from this video, just one, and live it today. Make it a habit. Let it challenge you. Let it shape you, because consistency, not intensity, is what transforms a man. If this video spoke to something deep in you, don't let it fade. Bookmark it, watch it again, but more importantly, act on it. Change happens not in grand gestures, but in the small, quiet moments when you choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Now I ask you, what's one thing you're going to do today? Without waiting, without applause? Share your commitment in the comments. Your story might help someone else reclaim theirs. You already have the strength. What you need now is rhythm. Repeat what matters. Refuse to break for what doesn't, and rise every day, not with noise, but with purpose.